Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. As you remember, in March I'm talking about Anglo-Saxon England, and obviously you'll all know it's been a really weird month, but I was able to take a few trips at the very beginning of the month before coronavirus quarantine started, so I will have some footage to share. I read 2 books this month, and the first one I'm going to talk about today is this one, The Private Lives of the Saints by Janina Ramirez. I really liked this way of telling history through the lens of saints, not least because I am really interested in religion. Okay, in this book, Dr. Ramirez focuses on the lives of selected saints during the Anglo-Saxon period in the United Kingdom. So that period lasted from about 400 AD, which is where we left off in the last video, to the Norman conquest in 1066. Obviously that's a really long period of time and there was a lot going on, and I thought she did a pretty good job of kind of capturing key moments. So in the early Anglo-Saxon period, the Celtic Christian church began to emerge out of Ireland and spread into the western edges of Britain. This was the church created by saints many of us have heard of, so St. Patrick, St. Columba. The interesting thing is that there were supposedly really significant differences between the Celtic church and the Roman church. And some of the main things they argued about was the date of Easter was apparently a huge contention between the two, and also the hairstyle that monks should have. These were 2 of the main arguments between these 2 churches. So in an effort to kind of re-establish the strength of the Roman church across the old Roman emperor, Pope Gregory the Great sent missionaries to Anglo-Saxon England to try to convert the Anglo-Saxon rulers and stop the spread of the Celtic church across the islands. I had never really looked into this area very much, but this book really focused on Northumberland and what is called the Golden Age of Northumbria, because there was so much development happening here. It was really interesting work. And so then I was kind of looking up all these places she was talking about, and it's insanely gorgeous and so interesting. And as soon as we're allowed out of quarantine, I'm gonna do a trip to Northumberland so that I can check out all these amazing sites. So as the Roman church's influence spread northward and the Celtic church's influence spread southward, and there was all this pagan influence from the Anglo-Saxons, there was a lot of convergence of culture, and it led to some really beautiful art. And one of the most interesting examples of all this overlapping influence was found in the Sutton Hoo burial site. So this is an amazing treasure that was found in England, I think in the 1940s, right after World War II. It's the burial site of an East Anglian king, and today a lot of those pieces are on display at the British Museum, and we made a special trip to the British Museum to see them, and I'll insert footage here. How's it going? Great. I'm speeding up here, but eventually the Roman church kind of beat the Celtic church and became the main influence, the main religious influence in Britain. But at that point, there was a new player on the scene, and that was Vikings. So Vikings started invading, again, starting from the north of England and kind of working their way down. A really famous story from this period of Viking invasions is the story of Alfred the Great, who is the only British ruler to have the Great after his name. And it's because he was the king of Wessex as the Vikings invaded all of England and had basically conquered all the other kingdoms except for Wessex. And he was able to stand firm against this invasion and kind of preserve Anglo-Saxon culture and withstand the tide of Vikings, and really basically founded England. And he's one of the saints talked about in this book as are kind of his immediate heirs and their family. And it's also the story that's told in the next book I read, which was The Last Kingdom. And I'm gonna insert that footage from when I talked about that now. The first book I read this month was The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell. And this is a really famous book, I think especially in the UK. It's about a boy called Uhtred who's born into an Anglo-Saxon family, but his father is killed in a battle and he's captured and raised by the Danes or the Vikings. And then it's just about his life as he interacts with Alfred the Great, who became King of England in the 800s/900s. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about was kind of a random page, honestly, or 2 pages of this book that really stuck with me. So one of the things from the medieval period that I think will be familiar to many people is this idea of sending women, wives, daughters to a nunnery or a convent. It's mentioned all the time, it happened a lot, and I always found this to be kind of like a horrifying thought of being sent to a convent and being banished there and your life being over and you having to live like in this kind of austere building and just pray all the time, and like being forced to do that against your will sounded really awful. And in this book, she talks a little bit about that and kind of explains why my perceptions of that being horrible might not have been really so horrible at all. Dr. Ramirez points out that these convents were actually places of great opportunity for women, so divorce wasn't common in this period at all, and sending their wives to a convent was a way for a male ruler to get rid of an unwanted wife, but it also allowed that unwanted wife to escape from her husband. And so she was able to escape to a convent and kind of live out the rest of her days there, which again sounds kind of iffy, but she goes on. Another benefit of convents was that it was a way for aristocratic families to keep control over land if they had daughters and not sons. So if they were able to establish an abbess, is that what it's called? An abbey. Yeah. So if they were able to found a monastery or a convent or an abbey and put their daughter in charge, that would keep the land within the family. It would give the daughter something to basically control, and it would prevent them from losing that land through marriage or having to pass it on to a distant male relative. So it's actually almost a way of giving women land and power. And finally, these convents in this time were actually places of great luxury and learning. So for a woman to be sent to a convent would open up kind of a world of opportunity to learn, and also to be surrounded by luxury and comfort, rather than perhaps having to submit to their husband's will or having to maintain a household in poor and misogynistic conditions. So these convents were actually really almost wonderful spaces for women to be in. And I just thought that was really interesting, and it overlaps with the second trip we took into London this month, which was to visit the Abbey of Barking, which was founded in 675 by Erkenwald for his sister Ethelberga. So it was potentially that same idea of founding an abbey, putting your sister in charge, and it means you get to keep the land, and it gives her like a very powerful position. So there's still an arch from that abbey preserved in what is now today All Hallows by the Tower Church, and we went to visit that as well, so I'll insert footage here. Okay guys, so that is all I have to report on for the month of March. I found this period of English history really interesting. I actually had another book that I wanted to read, which was a book about Vikings in Britain, but I didn't have time to get to it. Since I'm in quarantine, I might have time to do it now. Also, we'll see how next month goes. It's meant to be the Norman Conquest, and I have my books picked out and my trips picked out, but I'm not sure if I'll be allowed to leave my house to actually go on those trips. So I'll definitely report back, at least on the books, if not on the trips. And I hope you're all staying safe, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!